The sound cut through every corner of the refugee processing center like a knife. It had been going on for 3 hours now, and nobody knew how to make it stop. Lyra Thess held her baby against her chest, all 4 of her arms wrapped around the tiny body. Her compound eyes glistened with moisture that her species rarely showed. She was terrified. Micken had been crying since they arrived at Station Kepler 442, and nothing she did helped. Not feeding, not rocking, not the special wrapping cloth from their homeworld. Nothing worked. The processing center was crowded with hundreds of refugees from dozens of different species. They had all fled from the war, carrying whatever they could grab before their homes were destroyed. The massive hall smelled of fear and unwashed bodies and recycled air. Temporary walls divided the space into sections, but they did nothing to block sound. Other refugees stared at Lyra. Some looked sympathetic. The crying hurt their ears, their sensory organs, their equivalent of nerves. A Tarkosian male hissed something in his own language. Lyra didn't need a translator to know it wasn't kind. She wanted to apologize. She wanted to explain that Sorvalians didn't usually sound like this, that her baby was sick or scared or broken in some way she couldn't fix. But her throat was too tight, and she was too exhausted. Dr. Vex approached for the 4th time. The Centaurian doctor was made of something that looked like living crystal, and light refracted through his body in cold rainbows. He carried a medical scanner that hummed as it passed over Micken's small form. The infant's stress hormones are reaching dangerous levels, Dr. Vex said. His voice had no emotion in it. Centaurians didn't feel things the way other species did. Prolonged distress in Sorvalian newborns can trigger cascade organ failure. I recommend sedation. No, Lyra's voice cracked. Please, no. There must be another way. Dr. Vex tilted his head. I have attempted all standard interventions. The child does not respond to nutritional adjustment, environmental modification, or sonic therapy. The physiological data suggests— He's my baby, Lyra interrupted. Not data, please. The doctor paused. Something in his crystalline structure shifted, like light bending. I understand your distress. However, without intervention, the probability of infant survival decreases significantly within the next 2 hours. Lyra felt something break inside her chest. She had already lost her mate in the evacuation. Their home was ash. Everything she knew was gone. And now this. Now even her arms couldn't comfort her own child. Micken screamed louder, his tiny chitinous body rigid with misery. From somewhere above, in the observation deck that overlooked the processing floor, Captain Sarah Chen watched. She had been monitoring the situation for the past hour, ever since the biometric alarms flagged the Sorvalian infant as a medical emergency. Lieutenant Marcus Webb stood beside her, arms crossed. The doctor's right. They should sedate the kid. It's the humane thing. Sarah didn't answer. She kept her eyes on the young mother below. Lyra looked so small, so alone in that crowd of strangers. 4 arms that should have been enough to hold her baby safe, but weren't. Chen, Webb pressed, you're not thinking of getting involved, are you? We have protocols. The medical staff handles health issues, we handle security. Sarah had been a soldier for 12 years. She knew about protocols. She knew about keeping professional distance, about not getting emotionally invested in every sad story that walked through the door. There were thousands of refugees on this station, thousands of tragedies. You couldn't carry them all. She knew what it looked like when a mother was drowning. I'll be back, Sarah said, heading for the stairs. Chen, Webb called after her. What are you doing? She didn't answer. She was already moving, her boots loud on the metal steps leading down to the processing floor. Her hand touched the sidearm at her hip, out of habit, then dropped away. She wouldn't need it. The crowd parted as she walked through. People always made room for human soldiers. Humans had a reputation across the galaxy. They were the ones who fought harder than made sense, who didn't quit, even when they should. Warriors, sometimes monsters, definitely dangerous. Lyra saw the human approaching, and instinctively pulled Mikan closer. Her compound eyes went wide. Humans were large, and this one wore combat fatigues and carried weapons. Every instinct told Lyra to run, but she had nowhere to go. Sarah stopped a respectful distance away, and raised her hands, palms out. The universal gesture for peace. "I'm not here to hurt you," Sarah said slowly, letting her translator device catch up. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen. I'd like to help, if you'll let me." Lyra stared at her. "Help? How? The doctor tried everything." "I know, I watched." Sarah took one careful step closer. "But I'm not a doctor. I'm a human. And humans are pretty good with crying babies. We've had a lot of practice." That was an understatement. Human infants were helpless for years, totally dependent on their parents. Most species in the galaxy couldn't understand it. Why would evolution create offspring that required so much constant care? It seemed inefficient. But it meant humans had developed elaborate ways of soothing their young. Generations upon generations of trial and error, passed down through cultures and families. Sarah's grandmother had taught her, and her grandmother before that. "May I try? May I hold him?" Lyra looked down at Mikan, still screaming, then back at the human. What did she have to lose? Her baby was dying. The doctor wanted to sedate him. Maybe this strange human could do something different. "Yes," Lyra whispered. "Please." Sarah stepped forward and carefully, gently, took the infant in her arms. Mikan was so different from a human baby. His body was covered in soft chitin, not skin. He had 6 limbs instead of 4. His eyes were compound, multifaceted, reflecting light in strange ways. His mouth was structured differently, and the sound he made wasn't quite like anything Sarah had heard before. But underneath all those differences, she recognized something familiar. This was a baby who was scared and couldn't understand why. This was a small creature who needed comfort and didn't know how to ask for it. Sarah held Mikan against her chest and began to rock. Side to side, a gentle rhythm, like a boat on calm water. She bent her head down close to him and started to hum. Not words, just a melody, low and soft and steady. It was a lullaby her grandmother had sung. Sarah didn't remember the words anymore, didn't even remember what language they'd been in. But she remembered the tune, and she remembered how it felt to be small and scared, and have someone larger make you feel safe. The processing center held its breath. Hundreds of beings stopped what they were doing and turned to watch. Even the automated systems seemed to quiet. Everyone stared at the human soldier cradling an alien infant, swaying gently, humming an old Earth song. And slowly, impossibly, Mikan's cries began to soften. The change happened gradually. Then, all at once, Mikan's screams softened to whimpers, then to small hiccuping sounds. His rigid little body began to relax against Sarah's chest. His 6 limbs, which had been flailing in distress, slowly curled inward. Sarah kept rocking. She shifted her weight from foot to foot in a steady rhythm, the way her sister used to do with her twins, before the war took them. The memory hurt, but she pushed through it. This wasn't about her pain. This was about the baby in her arms. She adjusted her hold slightly, making sure Mikan could feel her heartbeat. Human hearts were loud, steady, rhythmic. Boom boom, boom boom, boom boom. The vibration traveled through her chest, into the infant's body. Lyra watched, with all 4 hands pressed against her mouth, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid to break whatever magic was happening. Dr. Vex moved closer with his scanner, keeping his movements slow, and quiet. His crystalline eyes flickered with light as he analyzed the readings. "Remarkable," he said, his emotionless voice barely above a whisper. "The infant's stress hormones are decreasing, heart rate stabilizing, respiration normalizing." "What is she doing?" Lyra asked. "What is this?" "I'm not certain," Dr. Vex admitted. He studied Sarah with new interest. "Captain Shen, your actions appear to trigger a calming response in the infant. Can you explain your methodology?" Sarah didn't stop rocking, didn't break the rhythm. "It's not methodology, it's just what humans do. Our babies are helpless for years. They can't walk, can't feed themselves, can't do anything alone. So we learn to comfort them. Rocking, singing, holding them close. It's instinct." "Instinct," Dr. Vex repeated, as if tasting the word. "Most species have efficient reproduction, quick maturation, minimal parental investment required. Humans are unusual in this regard." "Yeah, well," Sarah said softly, still humming between words. "Maybe inefficient isn't always bad." She patted Micken's back gently, a soft rhythmic pressure. Pat, pat, pat. Her grandmother had taught her this too. The combination of rocking, heartbeat, humming, and gentle patting created layers of comfort, multiple inputs that told the baby, "You're safe, you're held, you're not alone." Micken's eyes, all the facets of his compound vision, began to droop. His breathing slowed and deepened. The processing center was silent now, except for Sarah's quiet humming and the ambient noise of the station's life support systems. Lieutenant Webb had come down from the observation deck and stood at the edge of the crowd. His face showed something Sarah had rarely seen there. Wonder. Maybe a little bit of shame, too, for doubting her. Other refugees pressed closer, watching. A Zenthari mother with feline features clutched her own child and stared. A Tarkosian elder who had hissed angrily before now stood silent, his reptilian face unreadable. They had never seen anything like this. After several more minutes, Micken fell completely asleep. His tiny chest rose and fell peacefully. His limbs relaxed entirely. He looked for the first time since arriving at the station like a normal, healthy baby. Sarah continued rocking for another minute, making sure he was truly settled. Then, moving very carefully, she turned back to Lyra. "Here," Sarah said quietly. "Take him. Slowly, so we don't wake him." Lyra reached out with trembling arms. Sarah transferred the sleeping infant with practiced care, supporting his head and body until Lyra had him secure. The moment Micken settled against his mother's chest, Lyra began to cry. Not small tears, deep, wrenching sobs of relief and gratitude and exhaustion, all mixed together. "Thank you," Lyra managed between sobs. "Thank you. Thank you. I thought I was losing him. I thought—" "Shh," Sarah said gently, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You're not losing him. He's okay now. You both are." "But how? How did you do that?" Sarah smiled, tired but genuine. "Honestly, I just held him, that's all. Sometimes that's enough." Dr. Vex was still scanning, still recording data. "Captain Shen, this has significant implications. We currently have 47 other infants and juveniles in various states of distress across the station. Standard medical intervention has limited success. If your species possesses natural abilities in this area—" "We're not magic," Sarah interrupted. "We're just patient. And we've had a lot of practice being patient with babies." "Nevertheless," Dr. Vex continued, "I would like to study this further. With your permission, of course." Sarah was about to answer when she became aware of movement in the crowd. Other parents were stepping forward. A Cantarian father holding a listless child. A Brolian mother whose infant wouldn't eat. A Silesian with twins who hadn't slept in days. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their eyes said everything. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope. Lieutenant Webb moved to Sarah's side. "Captain," he said quietly, "you can't help all of them. It's not your responsibility." Sarah looked at the parents, then at Lyra, still crying softly with her sleeping baby. Then back at Webb. "Maybe not," she said, "but I can try." Over the next hour, Sarah held 6 different babies from 5 different species. She rocked a Cantarian infant who was feverish and fussy. She hummed to Brolian twins who had been separated from their parents during the evacuation and didn't understand where their family had gone. She spoke softly to a Silesian child old enough to understand words, telling stories about Earth while gently stroking the child's crystalline hair. Not every attempt worked perfectly. Some babies needed different approaches. The Brolian twins needed to be held together, not separately. The Silesian child didn't want to be rocked, but liked the vibration of Sarah's voice. The Cantarian infant settled better with firmer pressure, being held tighter rather than gentle cradling. But Sarah adapted. She paid attention to what each child responded to, and adjusted. It was exhausting work, both physically and emotionally. By the end of the hour, her arms ached, and her voice was hoarse. But every baby she held eventually calmed. Every parent who handed her their child got them back quieter, or sleeping, or at least less distressed than before. Word spread through the refugee center like fire through dry grass. By evening, there was a line of parents outside the small office that had been temporarily assigned to Sarah. They came from every section of the station, carrying babies and young children who were sick or scared or traumatized by war and displacement. Admiral Krell, the station commander, watched from his command center with narrowed reptilian eyes. He was Tarkosian, a species that valued order, hierarchy, and protocol above all else. What Captain Shen was doing didn't fit into any protocol he recognized. "This is irregular," he said to his second officer. "She has duties, security assessments, reports to file. She cannot spend her time as an unofficial nursemaid." "Sir," his second officer replied carefully, "the parents are responding positively. Stress levels in the refugee sectors are decreasing. We've had fewer incidents of violence or panic today than any day this week." Krell's tail twitched, a sign of irritation. "That may be, but there are regulations, procedures. She has violated several protocols already. Unauthorized interaction with refugees, failure to maintain professional boundaries, using military time for non-military purposes. What do you want to do, sir?" Krell stared at the monitor showing Sarah holding yet another crying infant, this one from a species he didn't immediately recognize. She looked exhausted, but she also looked determined. "Summon Captain Shen to my office," Krell said finally. "Tomorrow morning, 0600 hours. It's time we formalize this situation, one way or another." That night, Sarah finally returned to her quarters at 2300 hours. She had held 23 children over the course of 8 hours. Her arms felt like they might fall off. Her back ached from the constant rocking. Her throat was raw from humming and singing and telling stories in simple words that translators could easily convert. But when she closed her eyes, she didn't see the horrors she usually saw. The burning colony, her sister's children, dead before she could reach them, the faces of enemies she'd killed. Instead, she saw Micken's peaceful sleeping face. She heard the sighs of relief from grateful parents. She remembered Lyra's tears of joy. Maybe, Sarah thought as sleep finally took her, maybe this was what she was supposed to be doing all along. Maybe this was what being human really meant. Not the fighting, not the war, not the violence they were so terrifyingly good at. Maybe it was this. The stubborn refusal to let a baby cry alone. The inefficient, exhausting, deeply important work of making children feel safe. She slept better that night than she had in years. Admiral Krell's office was cold and precisely organized, like the Tarkosian himself. Every datapad stacked in perfect alignment, every surface clean and unmarked. The temperature kept low, the way his species preferred it. Sarah stood at attention before his desk, still tired from the night before, but ready for whatever came next. Captain Chen, Krell began without preamble, his reptilian features impossible to read. You have violated numerous protocols over the past 24 hours. Unauthorized contact with refugee populations, dereliction of assigned duties, failure to maintain professional boundaries, potential biological contamination risks from handling multiple species without proper sterilization procedures between contacts. Sarah said nothing. She knew better than to interrupt a commanding officer. Furthermore, Krell continued, you have created an expectation among the refugee population that cannot be sustained. There are currently 2,347 refugees on this station, with more arriving daily. You cannot personally attend to every distressed child. No, sir, Sarah agreed. I can't. Krell's eyes narrowed, yet you continue to try. There was a line of 37 parents outside your quarters this morning at 05:30 hours. This is untenable. Sarah waited. There had to be more. Krell wasn't the type to waste time on simple reprimands. The Admiral picked up a datapad, studying it. However, I am also a pragmatist. Dr. Vex has provided me with detailed reports. Since you began your unauthorized interventions, we have seen a 42% decrease in medical emergencies related to infant and juvenile distress. Violent incidents in refugee sectors are down 38%. Overall stress indicators across all populations have improved measurably. He set the datapad down and looked directly at Sarah. The station is overwhelmed, Captain. Our medical staff is overworked. Our security forces are stretched thin. We are not equipped to handle the psychological trauma that these refugees carry. You have, inadvertently, discovered a resource we did not know we possessed. Sarah began to understand where this was going. So I am giving you a choice, Krell said. Either cease these activities entirely and return to your assigned duties, or formalize this into an official program. Create protocols, train personnel, establish proper procedures. Make it systematic and sustainable. Sir, Sarah said carefully, if I formalize it, it won't be the same. This isn't about protocols. It's about connection, about being present with scared children and— Then make that the protocol, Krell interrupted. I do not care about the philosophical details. I care about results. Can you do this or not? Could she take something as instinctive and personal as comforting a baby and turn it into a training program? Could she teach other soldiers to open themselves up emotionally when military training was often about closing off? I'll need to select the right people, Sarah said. Not every soldier can do this. It requires a certain temperament, patience, emotional availability. Some of my people are too traumatized themselves, and I'll need time to develop the training. You have 72 hours, Krell said flatly. After that, I expect a formal proposal on my desk. Personnel selections, training protocols, resource requirements, everything. Dismissed. Sarah saluted and left, her mind already racing. She spent the next 3 days doing the hardest recruiting of her life. She interviewed every human soldier on the station, looking for specific qualities. It wasn't about combat experience or tactical skills. It was about something harder to define. Lieutenant Webb was her first volunteer, which surprised her. I watched you with that Sorvalian baby, he said when he requested to join. I've been really angry since we got assigned to refugee work. Felt like a waste of our training. But seeing you with those kids, I don't know, made me remember why we fought in the first place, to protect people, including the small ones. Sarah added him to the list. Private Joel Okafor was harder. He was young, only 23, and he'd lost his entire family when his colony was attacked. Sarah found him in the station's small chapel, just sitting in silence. "I can't do what you're asking," Joel said when she approached. "I can't be around kids. It hurts too much." "I understand," Sarah said, and she did. She almost left him alone. But something made her pause. "Joel, I lost my sister's kids too. Twin girls, 6 years old. I still hear them laughing sometimes when I'm falling asleep. It doesn't stop hurting." Joel looked up, his eyes red. "Then how do you do it? How do you hold those babies and not just break?" Sarah sat down beside him. "Because they need someone to hold them. And yeah, it hurts. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's supposed to hurt a little, so we don't forget what we're trying to protect." Joel was silent for a long moment. Then, "If I do this, if I try, and I can't handle it, then you stop," Sarah said firmly. "No shame in that. This isn't for everyone." He joined the program 2 days later. By the end of the 72 hours, Sarah had assembled a team of 12 human soldiers, willing to be trained in what she was calling compassionate contact protocols. She'd written up formal guidelines, though they felt strange and inadequate. Protocol 1. Approach calmly. No sudden movements. Let the parent decide if contact is appropriate. Protocol 2. Observe the child's responses. Different species, different individuals, will respond to different techniques. Adapt accordingly. Protocol 3. Common techniques include rocking, gentle sounds, rhythmic patting, maintaining skin contact, offering steady presence. Protocol 4. Your own emotional state matters. If you are distressed or angry, the child will sense it. Center yourself before attempting contact. Protocol 5. Know your limits. This work is emotionally demanding. Take breaks. Ask for help. She presented everything to Admiral Krell exactly 72 hours after their meeting. He reviewed her proposal in silence for several minutes that felt like hours. "This is highly irregular," he finally said. "I see nothing in galactic military doctrine that resembles this program. Because most species don't need it. They have more efficient child-rearing strategies. But the refugees here come from dozens of different species, all traumatized, all displaced. Their normal support systems are gone. We're filling a gap." Krell was quiet for another moment. Then, "Approved. Begin training immediately. I'm assigning you 6 additional personnel beyond your original 12. We are also coordinating with 3 other refugee stations who have requested information about this program." Sarah blinked. "Other stations already know?" "News travels quickly, Captain. Apparently someone recorded your interaction with the Sorvalian infant and shared it on civilian networks. It has been viewed approximately 47 million times across multiple systems." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Sir, I never intended." "The damage, if you can call it that, is done. Multiple stations are now requesting human compassionate contact teams. The Confederation government sees potential propaganda value. The military command sees strategic advantages in Hearts and Minds campaigns." Krell leaned forward, his reptilian features sharp. "But I want you to understand something, Captain. I do not care about propaganda or strategy. I care about the fact that we have over 2,000 refugees on this station who are suffering, and your methods reduce that suffering. That is all that matters to me. Do not let the politicians corrupt this into something it is not." Sarah felt a surge of respect for the rigid Tarkosian. "Yes, sir. I won't." "Good. Now get to work." The training began immediately. Sarah gathered her 12 volunteers in one of the empty cargo bays that had been hastily converted into a training space. They sat in a circle while she explained the basics. "This is going to feel strange at first," she told them. "Military training teaches us to suppress emotion, to stay controlled, to maintain distance. This is the opposite. You need to be present, emotionally open, genuinely caring. If you fake it, the children will know." "How?" asked Private Martinez, a combat medic. "They're babies. They're different species. How would they know? Because all children are good at reading intent, Sarah explained. Across every species we've encountered, young ones survive by being sensitive to the emotions of adults around them. They can tell the difference between someone who wants to help and someone who's just going through motions. She brought in Lyra and Nicken as demonstration subjects, with Lyra's enthusiastic permission. Nicken was healthy now, alert and curious. Sarah showed her team how to hold him, how to rock, how to adjust based on his responses. Joel went last. His hands shook as he took the infant. Nicken looked up at him with compound eyes and made a small, curious sound. "I don't know what to do," Joel whispered. "Just be with him," Sarah said softly. "That's all. You don't have to fix anything. Just be present." Joel stood there, holding the alien infant, and tears started running down his face. But he didn't break. He started rocking, gentle and uncertain, and Nicken settled against his chest with a contented sigh. "I'm doing it," Joel said, wonder in his voice. "I'm actually doing it." Sarah smiled. "Yeah, you are." Over the next week, her team worked with dozens of children. They learned which techniques worked for which species. They learned their own limits and how to support each other. And they learned that sometimes the best thing you could do was simply sit with a traumatized child and let them know they weren't alone. But not everyone approved. Korseth arrived on the station 3 weeks into the program. He was Vryn, one of the species the Confederation was at war with, though he claimed to be a civilian refugee. Tall, with iridescent skin that shifted colors with his emotions, he immediately began organizing opposition. Korseth's skin rippled with angry red and purple patterns as he stood in the center of the refugee common area, addressing a growing crowd. His voice carried naturally, designed by evolution to command attention. "They call it compassion," he said, his words translated into a dozen languages simultaneously. "They call it help. But what it really is cultural imperialism. Humans forcing their ways onto our children, making them dependent on human comfort, human methods, erasing our own traditions of child-rearing." Sarah stood at the back of the crowd, listening. Admiral Krell had warned her this might happen. Not everyone would welcome the program, even if it worked. "The Vryn have our own ways," Korseth continued. "The Zenthari have theirs. The Sorvalians have theirs. For thousands of generations, we raised our children without humans. We do not need them now. This is colonization by another name. They take our children into their arms and make them forget where they came from." Several refugees nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Lyra was there too, holding Nicken, her expression troubled. Furthermore, Korseth's voice grew harder. "We are at war with these humans. The Confederation has destroyed Vryn worlds, killed our people, and now they expect us to trust them with our most vulnerable? It is a trick, a strategy. Make us dependent, make us weak, make us forget that they are our enemies." Sarah felt Lieutenant Webb tense beside her. "Want me to shut him down?" Webb muttered. "Inciting discord in a refugee population is against station regulations." "No," Sarah said quietly. "He has a right to speak, and he's not entirely wrong." Webb looked at her sharply. "What?" "Think about it from his perspective. We are at war with the Vryn Collective. His people and ours are killing each other, and here we are, holding Vryn children, claiming to help. I'd be suspicious too." She stepped forward, moving through the crowd. People parted for her, some respectfully, others nervously. She stopped a few meters from Korseth, keeping her posture open and non-threatening. "You make valid points," Sarah said, her voice calm. "And you're right to question us. Trust should be earned, not demanded." Korseth's skin flashed surprise yellow before settling back to suspicious orange. "Then you admit this program is a deception?" "No. I admit that healthy skepticism is reasonable, but I also know what I've seen. I've held children from 16 different species over the past month. I haven't asked any of them to forget their culture or their families. I've just tried to help them feel safe when they were scared. Safe, Korsef repeated bitterly. My people will never be safe while the Confederation exists. You destroyed our colony on Vryn Prime. Thousands dead. Where was your compassion then? Sarah felt the words hit her chest like physical blows. He was right. The attack on Vryn Prime had been brutal. Necessary, the general said. Strategic, they called it. But thousands of civilians had died. I wasn't there, Sarah said quietly. I don't make decisions about colony strikes. But you're right. War is horrible. Children die. Families are destroyed. That's true for both sides. Then how dare you pretend to care about our children now? Sarah took a breath. This was the question she'd been asking herself every day. Because they're children. Because they didn't choose this war. Because every child deserves to feel safe, no matter what species they are, or what government claims authority over them. Before Corset could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights flickered to life. The crowd immediately panicked, parents grabbing their children, people running for shelters. Admiral Krell's voice came over the station-wide communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. Unidentified vessel approaching. This is not a drill. Sarah's military training kicked in immediately. Webb, get these civilians to the shelters. Move. As the crowd dispersed in controlled chaos, Sarah ran for the command center. By the time she arrived, the situation was already clear on the tactical displays. A Vryn collective warship had emerged from jump space at the edge of the system, and it wasn't alone. A small civilian transport was fleeing ahead of it. Status, Sarah demanded. The transport is requesting emergency docking, reported the tactical officer. They claim to be Vryn refugees, fleeing political purges within the collective. The warship is demanding we refuse them entry and return the refugees for prosecution. Prosecution, Admiral Krell said flatly. That is their word for execution. Scan the transport. What are we looking at? 73 life signs. Mixed ages. Definitely civilians. No weapons detected. Commander, they have children on board. Krell's tail lashed once, sharply. This is a civilian refugee station operating under Confederation humanitarian charter. We do not turn away refugees. Grant them emergency docking clearance. Sir, the tactical officer said carefully, the Vryn warship is powering weapons. They're demanding we comply or face attack. Our defensive capabilities are minimal. Confederation reinforcements are 4 hours away. The command center went silent. Everyone understood the math. The station couldn't withstand a sustained attack. They could try to evacuate, but not quickly enough. And the Vryn warship knew it. How many children on that transport? Krell asked. 26, sir, Sarah answered. Krell looked at Sarah, his reptilian face unreadable. Your opinion, Captain? Sarah didn't hesitate. We protect them. That's what we're here for. All of them. Even Vryn children? The enemy? Krell asked. Especially Vryn children. They're not the enemy. They're just children. Krell nodded slowly, as if this was the answer he'd expected. Grant docking clearance. Prepare to receive refugees. And someone contact Confederation Command. Tell them we're about to start an incident. The Vryn transport docked 20 minutes later. The refugees who emerged were in terrible condition. Malnourished, injured, terrified. Many showed signs of torture, and the children were worst of all. Vryn children were communal by nature, designed by evolution to live in large connected groups. Isolation was torture for them. But the collective had held these families in solitary confinement, punishment for political dissent. The children were catatonic, their bioluminescent skin patterns flickering erratically, a sign of severe psychological damage. Dr. Vex examined them quickly. Without intervention, several of these juveniles will not survive. Their neural patterns are collapsing. Vrin children require social connection to maintain basic brain function. What do they need? Sarah asked. Connection, community, safety, the very things that have been systematically denied to them. Admiral Krell had quarantined the Vrin refugees in a separate section of the station, trying to prevent conflict with the other refugees. But the isolation was making the children worse. Sarah could see it in their flickering skin patterns, their vacant stares. And then, Korseth appeared. The Vrin who had been protesting the Human Compassion Program stood at the barrier to the quarantine zone, staring at the new arrivals. His skin had gone completely gray, the Vrin color for grief. I know them, he said quietly. The tall one, Nerix, he was a teacher in my district. The family with 3 children, they lived near my home. They spoke out against the war, against the violence. This is how the collective rewards dissent. He turned to Sarah, and his skin rippled through a dozen colors she didn't recognize. My child is in there, my son. I haven't seen him in 6 months. They took him when they arrested my mate. I thought he was dead. Sarah understood immediately. Which one is he? Korseth pointed to a small Vrin child sitting alone in the corner, his skin barely flickering, his eyes unfocused. Keleth. He's only 4 cycles old. He doesn't even recognize me. He's dying. The hatred Sarah had seen in Korseth's eyes before was gone. There was only desperate fear. The same fear she'd seen in Lyra's eyes when Mikken wouldn't stop crying. The same fear every parent feels when their child is in danger and they can't fix it. Will you help him? Korseth asked, and his voice broke. Will you help an enemy's child the same way you helped hers? Sarah felt her chest tighten. Every instinct screamed at her. Vrin soldiers had killed her sister's family. She'd had nightmares about Vrin faces for years. The sound of their language made her reach for her weapon. She had every reason to say no, to walk away, to let someone else deal with this. But she looked at little Keleth, sitting alone, his light fading, and she saw a child. Just a child, not a soldier, not an enemy. A scared little boy who needed help. Yes, Sarah said, I'll try. She walked into the quarantine zone slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. The Vrin refugees watched her with terrified eyes. They knew what humans were capable of. They'd probably lost family to human attacks. Sarah sat down on the floor among the Vrin children. There were 11 of them, all showing signs of severe distress. Their bioluminescent patterns were chaotic, unsynchronized. In a healthy Vrin community, children's patterns would pulse together, creating a shared rhythm that helped regulate their nervous systems. She began to hum, the same lullaby she'd hummed for Mikken, for dozens of other children, low and steady and calm. The children didn't react at first. Then slowly, one of them looked at her, then another. Their patterns began to shift, trying to synchronize with the rhythm of her song. Sarah gestured to the doorway where her team had gathered. Webb, Joel, Martinez, and 9 others. Come in, sit with them. Her team entered quietly and sat in a circle around the Vrin children. Not touching, not forcing contact, just present, creating a perimeter of safety. Joel sat next to little Keleth. The boy didn't acknowledge him. Joel didn't try to make him. He just sat there, steady and calm, and started humming along with Sarah's melody. Gradually, the Vrin children began to move. They crawled toward the circle of humans, drawn by the calm, steady presence, the rhythmic sounds. They began to huddle together in the center, their bodies touching, their patterns starting to synchronize. It took over an hour, but eventually, the children's bioluminescence began to pulse together. Their vacant stares became more focused. They started to look around, to recognize their parents, watching from outside the circle. Keleth looked up and saw Korseth. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Papa, he said in the Vrin language. Korseth was crying, his skin flashing every color at once. Yes, yes, my light. I'm here. Sarah stood up carefully, maintaining the circle with her team. Bring the parents in. Let them reunite, but keep the circle. The children need community right now, not isolation. As the Vryn parents entered and gathered their children, as the families reunited in tears and joy and relief, Sarah felt something settle in her chest. The Vryn warship commander's voice crackled through every speaker on the station. Commander Zyrith sounded exactly like what Sarah expected. Cold, military, absolute. "This is your final warning," Zyrith declared. "You are harboring enemies of the Vryn Collective. Traitors who have stolen state property and spread seditious lies. Return them immediately, or your station will be destroyed." Admiral Krell stood in the command center, his reptilian face carved from stone. "This is a civilian refugee station operating under Confederation humanitarian law. We do not surrender refugees to face execution. Your demands are rejected." "Then you have chosen destruction." The tactical display showed the Vryn warship powering up weapons. The station's defensive shields came online, but everyone in the command center knew they wouldn't last long. Maybe 15 minutes against sustained fire, 20 if they were lucky. "Confederation reinforcements?" Krell demanded. "Still 3 hours away, sir," the tactical officer reported. "We've sent distress signals on all channels. Nothing closer is responding. Begin evacuation protocols. Non-essential personnel to the escape pods. Prioritize children and injured." Sarah's mind raced. 3 hours. They needed to stall for 3 hours. But how? The Vryn commander wasn't interested in negotiation. He had his orders, and the firepower to enforce them. Then an idea struck her. A terrible, desperate idea that might get her court-martialed if it failed. But she thought about Kelleth's face when he recognized his father, about Mikken sleeping peacefully in Lyra's arms, about every child on this station who would die if the Vryn warship opened fire. "Sir," Sarah said, "request permission to open a broadcast channel." Krell looked at her sharply. "To say what, Captain?" "We have no leverage for negotiation." "Not negotiation, sir. Testimony." She explained her plan quickly. Krell's eyes widened, then narrowed in calculation. "This is highly irregular. It could be seen as propaganda, as manipulation. Or it could be seen as the truth," Sarah said. "Sometimes that's enough." Krell was silent for 5 long seconds. Then, "Do it. Open all channels. Confederation networks, Vryn networks, civilian frequencies, military channels, everything. I'll take responsibility for the consequences." Sarah moved to the communication station. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them steady. This had to work. She keyed in the commands to activate every broadcast system on the station, routing feeds from security cameras throughout the refugee sections. "This is Captain Sarah Chen, Confederation Peacekeeping Force," she began. "I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a politician. I'm just a soldier who's been trying to help some children sleep at night." She pulled up the video feeds. The main screen showed the processing center, where human soldiers sat with children from a dozen different species. Lyra was teaching Private Martinez a Servalian lullaby. Joel sat with a group of Zenthari and Vryn children, reading them a story through a translator, his voice soft and patient. A month ago, a Servalian mother arrived at this station with a baby who wouldn't stop crying, Sarah continued. Medical intervention failed. The infant was dying. I held him because I didn't know what else to do, and somehow, it helped. The video shifted to show Korseth standing with his son Kelleth, the Vryn child's bioluminescence, now synchronized with his father's, both of them pulsing with the deep blue of contentment. "This is Kelleth," Sarah said. "He's 4 cycles old. Vryn, your people, Commander Zyrith. Until a few hours ago, he was catatonic from torture and isolation. Now, he's reunited with his father. Now, he's healing." She pulled up more feeds, the nursery section where different species children played together under the watchful eyes of their parents and the human compassion teams. a Tarkosian child helping a Brolian infant learn to walk, a Sorvalian mother braiding a Xanthari girl's fur while they both laughed. "These are the people you're threatening to kill," Sarah said quietly. "Not soldiers, not strategists, just parents trying to keep their children safe. Just children trying to understand why their worlds burned. Just beings who want to live." In the Vryn warship, Commander Zyrith watched the broadcast with his senior staff. His scaled face showed nothing, but his claws tapped against his command chair. Tap, tap, tap. "Commander," his weapons officer said carefully, "the broadcast is being picked up across both Confederation and collective space. Civilian networks are already sharing the footage." "I can see that," Zyrith said coldly. "It changes nothing. We have our orders." But even as he said it, he watched a human soldier, one of the beings he'd been trained to see as monsters, gently rocking a Vryn infant to sleep. The baby's skin pulsed with peaceful green light, synchronized with the rhythm of the human's heartbeat. "Sir, we're receiving communications from Vryn civilian channels," the communications officer reported. "Thousands of messages. They're seeing the footage of the children. There are protests forming in 3 major cities. They're demanding we stand down." "Ignore them," Zyrith ordered. "Civilian opinion is irrelevant. Ready weapons." On the station, Sarah continued her broadcast. She wasn't making political arguments. She wasn't talking about treaties, or territorial disputes, or military strategy. She was just showing the truth. Children being held. Parents crying with relief. Different species learning to coexist in the face of shared trauma. "I don't know if this will change anything," Sarah said into the camera. "Maybe it won't. Maybe Commander Zyrith has his orders, and nothing else matters. But I wanted you to see what you'd be destroying. Not strategic assets. Not military targets. Just this. Just children sleeping. Just parents grateful their babies are finally safe." The final image showed the entire refugee center. Human soldiers scattered throughout, but barely noticeable among the crowd of parents and children from countless species. All of them together, the boundaries between former enemies blurred by shared exhaustion and shared hope. The broadcast ended. Sarah closed the channel and looked at Admiral Krell. "Well, sir, I just committed career suicide. Hope it was worth it." Krell's expression was unreadable. "We shall see, Captain. We shall see." On the Vryn warship, chaos was building. The communications officer looked pale. "Commander, the civilian response is escalating. The footage has been viewed over 200 million times in the past 10 minutes. Government censors are trying to suppress it, but it's spreading too fast." "I said ignore." "Sir," the weapons officer interrupted, something he'd never done in 20 years of service. "Sir, I have children. 2 daughters. If they were on that station, if they were hurt and scared and someone helped them, I don't think I could fire on that station, sir. Not with them inside." Zyrith turned slowly to look at his weapons officer. The man had gone gray, expecting punishment for his insubordination. But Zyrith just felt tired. "Your daughters are safe at home," Zyrith said quietly. "Yes, sir. But those Vryn children in the footage aren't. And they're somebody's daughters and sons, too. The collective said they were traitors, criminals. But they're just kids, sir. And those humans are helping them." On the bridge, 12 officers watched their commander, waiting. Half of them had families. All of them had seen the footage of human soldiers, their enemies, treating Vryn children with gentleness. "Commander," the communications officer said quietly, "I'm receiving a private channel request. It's encrypted. Command-level clearance. It's from Central Command on Vryn Prime." Zyrith accepted the transmission. The face that appeared on his screen was high-ranking military, someone with authority. The conversation was brief, clipped, coded in ways that would make the official transcripts look reasonable. But the message was clear. When it ended, Zyrith sat back in his command chair. His crew watched him, barely breathing. "Stand down weapons," he said finally. "Set course for the neutral zone border." "Sir?" the weapons officer asked, disbelief in his voice. "We're withdrawing?" "The situation has become politically complicated," Xyrath said carefully, knowing this conversation was being recorded. "Central Command has determined that aggressive action against a civilian refugee station would be counterproductive at this time. We are withdrawing to await further orders." Nobody mentioned the protests. Nobody mentioned the broadcast. Nobody mentioned that the Vryn government had just experienced the fastest reversal of public opinion in their history, driven by footage of enemy soldiers caring for Vryn children. The official record would say it was strategic calculation, but everyone on that bridge knew the truth. On station Kepler 442, the tactical officer announced, "Sir, the Vryn warship is powering down weapons. They're changing course. They're leaving." The command center erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, cried with relief, laughed hysterically. Admiral Krell allowed himself the smallest hint of a smile. Sarah just felt exhausted. She slumped into a chair, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. Lieutenant Webb dropped into the seat beside her. "You did it," he said. "You crazy, reckless, brilliant lunatic. You did it." "We did it," Sarah corrected. "All of us. Every person on this team who decided children matter more than politics." In the refugee center, the news spread quickly. Parents held their children tighter, grateful for a danger that had passed. Lyra found Sarah later that evening, Micken sleeping peacefully against her chest. "They're saying you saved us," Lyra said, with just words and pictures. Sarah shook her head. "I didn't save anyone. I just showed people what was already here. Sometimes that's enough." Korseth approached, his son Keleth holding his hand. The Vryn child looked healthier now, his bioluminescence steady and bright. "I owe you an apology," Korseth said, his skin rippling with shame purple. "I said terrible things about you and your program. I was wrong." "You were scared," Sarah said gently. "You had every reason to distrust us. We're at war with your people. I'm honestly surprised you let me help your son." "You gave me a choice," Korseth said. "That's what I didn't understand before. You didn't force your methods on us. You offered. And when I had no other options, when my child was dying, you helped anyway. Even though my people have killed yours, even though I said those things about you." Sarah knelt down to Keleth's level. The Vryn child looked at her with large, curious eyes. "Hi, Keleth. How are you feeling?" Keleth's skin pulsed happy yellow. "Better. Papa says you helped me when I was sick. Thank you." "You're welcome, little one." 6 months later, Station Kepler 442 looked completely different. The temporary processing center had been converted into a permanent humanitarian zone. The Confederation and the Vryn Collective hadn't made peace. The war continued, brutal and grinding. But they'd established humanitarian corridors, neutral spaces where civilians could seek safety. Sarah's Compassionate Contact program had expanded to 17 other stations. Human soldiers across the Confederation were being trained in techniques for comforting traumatized children. Some did better than others. Not everyone had the temperament for it, but enough did. Dr. Vex had published his research on human alloparenting instincts. His paper, dry and clinical in typical Centaurian fashion, had become required reading for refugee center personnel across dozens of species. The conclusion was simple. Humans possessed unusual natural abilities for cross-species caregiving, likely evolved from their extended juvenile dependence periods. This resource should be utilized in humanitarian efforts. Joel had officially adopted Kess, the Zendari child he'd first bonded with. The paperwork had been complicated. Cross-species adoption was rare, but Admiral Krell had personally expedited it. Sarah had been there when the final approval came through, had seen Joel's face transform with joy and terror and love. "I don't know how to be a dad," Joel had confessed to her. "I don't know if I can do this." "Nobody knows how," Sarah had told him. "You just show up every day and try. That's all any parent does." Now Sarah walked through the station's new wing, a nursery designed collaboratively by representatives from dozens of species. It incorporated care practices from across the galaxy, each culture contributing their wisdom. Children played there, a chaotic mix of species and ages. A Servalian infant watched a Tarkoshan toddler with fascinated compound eyes. 3 Vryn children played a game with 2 humans and a Xanthari. Parents from former enemy species shared parenting advice through translators, laughing at the universal challenges of raising children. Lyra was there with Mikan, who had grown into an energetic, healthy child. He saw Sarah, and all 4 of his arms reached out. "Sarah! Sarah!" She picked him up, still amazed that this was her life now. Not the war, not the killing. This, being someone children ran to instead of away from. "How's my favorite little guy?" she asked. "Good. Mama says I can show you my drawing." It was a crude picture, the way all young children's art was crude. But Sarah could make out figures, different species, holding hands in a circle. Above them, stars. "It's beautiful," Sarah said honestly. "What is it?" "It's us," Mikan explained proudly. "All of us together. Mama says we're a family now. All different, but a family." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She looked around the nursery, at the impossible mix of beings who should have been enemies. Species who had fought wars for generations, now watching each other's children play together. Not because some treaty forced them to, not because some government mandated it, but because they'd all been desperate parents in a refugee center. And they'd learned something simple. Children are just children, no matter what they look like. Lieutenant Webb found her there an hour later. "We just got word," he said. "Diplomatic negotiations are starting. Real ones, not just posturing. Both sides are under pressure from civilian populations. The footage from that day, people haven't forgotten. There are peace movements on both sides now." Sarah asked, "Will it work?" Webb shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. Wars don't end overnight. But it's something, more than we had before." Sarah watched Mikan return to playing with his friends, Vryn, Xanthari, human, Sorvalian, all mixed together. They didn't know they were supposed to be enemies. They just knew they were children who liked to play together. "You know what the funny thing is?" Sarah said quietly. "We didn't win because we were stronger. We didn't win because we were smarter. We won because humans evolved to be terrible at parenting." Webb laughed. "What?" "Our babies are helpless for years, totally dependent. So we evolved to be patient, to be attentive, to respond to crying even when we're exhausted. Most species see it as inefficient, but it meant that when there was a crying baby in front of me, I couldn't walk away. Every instinct told me to help. And that saved us all," Webb said softly. "Yeah," Sarah agreed, "that saved us all." As the day shift ended and evening shift began, Sarah prepared to leave. But Korseth stopped her at the door. His skin rippled with gratitude blue. "I wanted you to know," he said, "I've been in contact with others in the collective. There are more who want to defect. More families who want safety for their children. Because of what happened here. Because of what you showed us was possible." "This wasn't just me," Sarah protested. "I know, but you started it. You picked up a crying alien baby when you had no reason to help. When we'd given you every reason to hate us. That meant something. That changed something." After he left, Sarah stood alone in the doorway, looking back at the nursery. The children were settling down for evening rest time. Human soldiers moved among them, helping parents prepare for bedtime. Soft lullabies in a dozen languages mixed in the air. She thought about that first day, when Mikan's cries had filled the processing center, and she'd made a choice that had seemed so small at the time. Just picking up a baby. Just trying to help. But small choices, multiplied across thousands of people, became something larger. Became bridges between species. Became hope in the middle of war. Became proof that compassion could matter, even when everything else said it shouldn't. Her communicator buzzed. Another station requesting compassionate contact training. Another group of soldiers learning that sometimes the bravest thing you could do wasn't fight. Sometimes it was just refusing to let a baby cry alone. Sarah accepted the request and headed to her office to begin planning the training program. Behind her, in the nursery, the children slept. Different species, former enemies, all peaceful together. The whole room, silent except for the quiet breathing of beings too young to understand what borders they'd crossed, what histories they'd overcome, what future they might be building. Just children sleeping. Just parents grateful for another day of peace. Just humans doing what they'd always done best, showing up when someone small and scared needed to be held. And somehow, impossibly, that had been enough.